Welcome to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Rachele Brooke Smith.
And I'm Emilio Palafox.
And today we have a super special guest, medical engineer, which I love that he calls himself that, Dr. Alexander Paziotopoulos, one of my favorite new last names. But
yeah.
Love, why don't you tell the world why he's here and how awesome he is?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Alexander. So, for those listening, Dr. Alexander Paziotopoulos, MD, he combines his background in Ashtanga Yoga and Shaolin Kung Fu with his specialized training in anti-aging, regenerative, and functional medicine to heal the whole self and repair the damage done by aging. He strives to create not only a better relationship with oneself, and as you know, that's what we're all about on this show, but allowing the true sense of health to translate into all relationships and facets of life. As you guys know on the show at Relationship Renegades, we're all about the relationship to self, others, and the world around us. And so these are one of the many reasons we're loving to talk with Dr. Alexander today. What I love about his practice is that he practices what he preaches and on his own time for health and vibrancy, but also that it's about the long-term relationships with his clients so that they can achieve a high quality of life and longevity. And understanding that it does take the time and commitment, and that you and your team, I love that you're there every step of the way for them with their annual health optimization packages and more to really achieve optimum results, which is the outcome here at the end of the day. So without further ado, Dr. Alexander Paziotopoulos, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, we are so excited to be here. We were talking beforehand, I come from a very medical family, and I also we both have had some pretty severe health challenges, myself being a really bad gut health issue, and now recently trying to figure out hormonal issues, getting into my 30s, just a big difference in the world, and recently finding out, just so many myths out there, and especially women's health. And so we're just so excited to have you on the show. And, I love that I don't say you call yourself, but like medical engineering. Tell us about that and why that's so important and why it's different than really what most people are used to.
Sure. As physicians, we're taught a really basic thing from medical school, and it's how to write a note. And when you write a note, at the end of your note, you write this thing called an assessment and a plan. The assessments are the problems, and then what are you going to do about it? So a lot of the time it would just be like, oh, you have hypertension, and I'm going to give you this hypertension medicine, right? Well, let's think about like if you were a complex machine, what an engineer would do, right? The engineer would be like, well, why does this machine have hypertension? It wasn't designed to do that. It was designed to run in this certain pressures, right? So there's got to be a reason why this machine is not running according to spec. Now, the engineer wouldn't say, well, I'm going to give this specific medicine or whatever he's going to do to inhibit another function so I can get this function to work better. Like, no, there's no way the engineer would do that. They're going to really repair the problem, or they're going to find out why it's wrong and get it to work better. In fact, engineers take it to another step, and usually if they're given a machine, brand new machine, and you let the engineers work on it, they'll make it last longer. They'll make it work better. Whereas like if it was to produce this much power, it'd produce more power, right? It'll be more reliable because they run through what's called systems-based engineering protocols. So what they're going to look at is, when is this part going to fail? When's that part going to fail, right? So we're going to intervene before that happens, right? What are the maintenance things that need to be done at what intervals to keep this machine running perfectly? None of that's applied to humans. And we're the most complex machine on the planet. All biological machines, but really us with our specialized brains, we're really complex. But there's no systems-based engineering for you. But there are for the airlines, thank God, so we don't die. Right? Can you imagine if they treated the airline industry like they treat us?
That's such a great point. Like, that is such a great point.
Yeah. I would always say, like, people like put more oil and check their stuff on their cars and they do their actual systems. Like, it's like...
100%, right? Can you imagine, like, well, I just flew from Dallas. The plane looks fine. Everything was good. We just
It looks good on the outside. Must be doing great on the inside.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's why
no way.
it's
like,
so important.
There's so many checklists that every single person, like the pilot, the people in the tower, the engineers on the ground, like everything has to go through these really detailed checks before that plane's allowed to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
But we don't do that for humans. So that's basically what I'm trying to do. And I'm not an engineer. I look to see how engineers were doing things. And I'm like, well, we must be able to apply that to medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Because, so I did regular, family practice. And then I did functional and regenerative medicine, even some age reversal medicine, and had peptides and went into stem cells. But it's all problem based. It's all, they're going to use these things according to this problem. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to work on optimization, but how do you do that? And so, it's a pretty easy lookup, systems based engineering has been around for over 100 some years. It was necessary at the Industrial Revolution because things got more and more complex.
Yeah.
Systems got more complex, machines got more complex. And so engineers had to develop systems to deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think and I think when things get more complex, you think about as we evolve, we don't live in a perfect world, right? And we live in concrete jungles with numerous stressors. And based on how we've treated our body or now what the environment's doing to our body, it's, I think, and especially as we age, it's like it's kind of like what I love the way that you talked about, the way that you grew up, with meditators and you were eating a primarily plant-based diet and what seemed to be when you used to share this in other talks, how, the fundamentals were right and the main fundamentals were dialed in. However, it was like, what more can we do, especially as we age? And I think because we live in these concrete jungles with all these numerous stressors, both conscious and non-conscious, that we need things that bridge the gap between ancient medicine and modern technology or some of the modern things that we're doing now that you're talking about, because it matters. And at the end of the day, I think, we always talk about, filling up our cup so that we're better for our relationships. And it's like, but filling up our cup in all the ways that you're talking about, and to make sure that we do put the oil in our engine and we do check out the things so that you can then be better for everyone that you interact with. Yeah.
Well, and I think the biggest thing that I want to say that, I think most people would be like, well, yeah, that makes sense, but it's so confusing because there's so many different things that people talk about health, or things that, like, oh, well, I'll just go to my doctor and he'll tell me what to do. And then they might get put on a medicine that might cause some different weird side effects that might have been worse than what they had before. Or they might get told by one health expert or one, fad diet that they should be keto. And then another person's like, no, you should be vegan, or no, you should be this. And so, I think I love that you're helping people be like, no, it's personalized medicine. It's personalized. Because we really have talked about and found for our own selves, like the only diet that actually works is the you diet, based on your personal lifestyle, genetics and your personal testing. So can you talk a little about, for people listening, they're like, okay, I get this kind of medical engineering side. I get that I need to take care of myself, but how do I do it? And how do you work that's different than other maybe medical facilities out there?
Good question. So it all depends on, your age, what you want, and how much you're willing to invest in yourself, right? So, some people have a lot of money and they can do everything, right? They can do everything from age reversal to neurofeedback, and they can just do everything. But not everyone has that capacity. So what I want to do for somebody and what we're able to do sometimes is not the same. But the thing that everyone can do for people, for themselves, is they can do all the lifestyle changes. And, and we'll go over that. And that will help you live a really robust quality life. Now, we want to take it further. We want to make you optimize. So we want to actually extend how long you're able to stay on the planet. We want to try to, look out for things that might happen, like cancers and stuff like that, and treat them before they occur. We want to optimize your brain functioning, and we want to look at what's your memory like right now, and have some quantitative data for that. And I want to really look at how you are yourself, at your spirit, and I want to quantify that. most people don't quantify spirit. They just say, oh, I'm doing this as spiritual practice, right? And well, you can quantify it. Someone with a powerful spirit, well, I can measure that.
Amazing.
Really?
I can measure how they're acting in real time. Like, someone with a really powerful spirit, I tell people that all the time. They say they walk in the room. All you know about this person is they have powerful spirit, right? And you answer and I'll ask you some questions like, is this person disheveled? Probably not, right? The person with a powerful spirit, are they fumbling like through their bag and like they don't know why they're there, or like they're figuring out like, oh, I lost this, or they're dropping that? Probably not, right?
Yeah.
Most likely that person like is put together. They have purpose, right? They walk in the room. They meet everyone's gaze, but yet they don't stare at anybody, right? Or they don't have any goofy looks at somebody, but like they acknowledge the people in the room. They go to where they need to go. They do their business, right? And they keep themselves together. And like just say something really weird, like someone comes up to them and says like, oh, your daughter was in an accident or something, right? The person with a more fragile spirit would kind of drop to the ground and freak out or start screaming or have some kind of emotional reaction that takes them out of real time and takes them out of their ability to deal with the situation in the best way. Somebody with a very powerful spirit would still be affected, right? But they'll be able to channel it and be able to ask the appropriate questions so that they can actually go help their daughter.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm always asking people in consults, like, well, how are you dealing with that? Because they'll say, I'm stressed for this, or I'm stressed for that, or this is causing me to do that, or that's causing me to do this. And really, those are just external stressors, right? Just like gravity, just like everything else. And you should be able to prepare yourself for when those things happen. It's not like they're ever not going to happen. They're going to happen. All this stuff's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
How are you going to deal with it?
Yeah. What they're speaking our language for sure. It's like, and I love that an MD like yourself who has done a lot of, research and studies and schooling, with, not only, the foundational practice of medicine, but then obviously going to studying stem cell and regenerative medicine and functional medicine and like on and on and on and on. That is speaking about the spiritual because, we want to be able to talk about not only the physical, mental, emotional, but spiritual quadrants of life. This almost like the, as within, so without, people concentrate a lot on the external things, but not within, so that when that, let's say a storm is happening in someone's life, like you had mentioned, it's like, can they go within and have a strong internal system that eye of the storm, if you will, that can, like one of our mantras is to like, just let whatever happens be okay.
Yeah.
And I think, I love that you talk about that. And that I had no idea, the measuring of this, and that you guys actually track and measure that. I'd love to learn a little bit more.
So, the spirit comes up in a lot of different ways. And whether you want to talk about spirit or you want to just talk about physical stress, one of the ways that we like to measure is we look to see if you're in coherence. And so coherence is kind of a weird word. It's hard to understand, but basically, if you take your breath and you put it on a graph, and like that's your inhale and that's your exhale, and you took your average person and you hook them up to the electrodes in the strap, it's not this beautiful sine wave, right? It's jagged, right? It's different distances between each breath, different amounts of breathing. It's usually shallow. It's usually kind of rough between the inhale and the exhale. But if you slow your breath down, if you deepen your breath, if you make it smooth, you get to this coherent pattern. And then your heart rate starts linking up to your breathing rate. So when you get in coherence, and that's why we do biofeedback and measure people here at the clinic, you're not stressed. You're not physically stressed because there's, whether you're stressed thinking about something, and then there's physiological stress. So physiological stress, we can see that you're not in coherence. That means that you're in fight or flight, that you're using the sympathetic nervous system, and that if you're in that system, well, you're shutting down all of the other systems that are not important to running away or fighting or hiding. You're shutting down your immune system, you're shutting down your gut, you're shutting down your liver, your kidneys, all the non-essential things. Well, and also the DNA repair, intracellular repair, all that kind of stuff.
So are you saying, real quick, I just want people to hear that. So like whenever we're in a fight or flight mode or anxious or stress, we're literally turning off our body's ability to have a good immune system for DNA repair, for digestion. So I know a lot of people are in a state of a lot of fear or anxiety or overwhelm or stressed a lot. So what would you say to them if they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa? Like, because one of my favorite things, especially during this whole pandemic, one of our great mentors on a program called Optimal Being was basically like, hey, if because people would get mad at each other they're like, oh man, why are you so you shouldn't be happy right now. The world's in a crisis. Like, how are you happy right now? And the person, he was like, well, just tell them that it's good for your immune system. Like just the happier you are, the less stressed you are, the better your immune system's going to be. So what better way to fight a pandemic or a virus than to keep yourself optimal? Your
spirit high, yeah.
Can you talk more about that?
Sure. So what I found was, I know a lot of different meditators and Ashtangis and different yogis and things like that. You would think that after a decade or more of practicing a meditation or practicing a breathing exercise or Tai Chi, that you would be able to get out of that fight or flight and get into this, parasympathetic rest, relaxation state right away. Well, that's not the case. Mm-hmm. I've taken plenty of practitioners and I've hooked them up and they're still in fight or flight. If you take some Buddhist monks from some temple over in the East and you hook them up, they're all in coherence, right? Mm-hmm. But we're supposed to be doing the same stuff they're doing over there, but we're not doing it, right? So all these people are going to yoga class and they think that I did yoga, right? Well, probably not. You went to a nice class and you feel pretty good, but you probably didn't achieve coherence, and you probably really didn't do everything the way you're supposed to, because a lot of these teachings have been lost. And, kind of a pet peeve of mine is how yoga has been bastardized through Instagram. People, all they want to do is really hard poses. They want to have a really slim body, right? They want to look good, and they want to do these really intricate poses. And that has nothing to do with yoga.
Yeah.
Right? I went to a Yoga Journal conference a few years ago, and the top teachers that I wanted to see, their classes were open. And like these teachers, these Instagram teachers, had hundreds and hundreds of people in their class while they were playing like some, music and dancing and stuff like that. And the real masters, their classes were like half full. So it's no wonder that everyone's really stressed, is because all that's going to do is going to create more stress. It's like, oh, my body's not like that, and I can't do that pose and all this kind of stuff. And it's all exterior, when all these spiritual practices are supposed to be like, well, what's happening inside of me, right? Yeah. It's supposed to be, you look in the mirror every day to look at your face, and you do a spiritual practice to look at your soul, right? And to also examine your body on the inside. Like, oh, wow, I never really noticed that I'm holding a lot of tension in my pelvic floor. Or I didn't notice that I'm really holding tension in my gut. Or I didn't really notice that I have this really weird contraction going on in my shoulder. And that's why I'm in shoulder pain, right? This is what a practice is supposed to be revealing to you. Not the exterior, but the interior. Yeah. So there's different practices that we give people, teaching them coherence training. And for people that are just listening to the show, they can go to heartmath.org. And they can learn a lot by just reading some of the articles there and practicing there. And if they want to go further, they could contact us, or they can even contact Dr. Eugenie Paps that works with us, and go directly through her and start doing biofeedback even over Zoom.
I'm so glad you brought up the HeartMath Institute. Years ago, I was fascinated, but I'm still fascinated with them. I ended up getting their certification, becoming a HeartMath certified coach at the time. And I think not a lot of people, we're focused on, and it's incredible. Like the head brain is incredible. The gut brain is incredible, but I don't think a lot of people talk about, the heart brain and the coherence that you talked about and how that it's important for, harmonious living, I guess is, I would say. And
it's a foundation, right? Like all the things we do build on foundations, and without having that foundation taken care of, it's going to percolate through everything else, and it's going to disrupt everything that we're doing to help optimize you. So these base layer things, a lot of them I can't do for people. I can just try to show them the way, and they have to do it, and we can try to follow up with them. And it's not like we can't help you if you don't do anything like that, if you don't get it perfect, but it helps a lot when you get those foundational things addressed. Rachel, like you were bringing up earlier about like gut stuff.
Yeah, gut and hormone stuff.
How difficult gut stuff is. And, early in my training when I went through functional medicine, it's like, oh, I'm going to do this stool test, and I'm going to do these food sensitivity panels, right? And I'm going to give these prebiotics, and I'm going to kill this yeast, and I'm going to change it with this diet, and everything's going to be just fine. Well, guess what? Like more than half of the time, that doesn't work. Like, and so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I'm doing everything. I see the labs. I know what I need to do. I know I need to change this. What is the deal?
Yeah.
Right? Well, what I didn't understand was the pelvic floor problem with most people, and especially with women. And when women they think of pelvic floor, they think of doing Kegel exercises, right?
I was just going to ask you, explain what this pelvic floor thing is, because maybe I don't even know that I have this problem.
People have a tone in their pelvic floor. So anus, like all the muscles around your vagina pulling up into the cervix, and then muscles around your urethra. And guys, the same thing. They just have a perineal body in between, right? All three of those areas in your pelvic floor, you have control over independently, but most people can't independently control them.
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm literally like trying.
Show him, babe. Show him. Let's show him.
Really trying to tap into all those areas down there. And like, wow, can I access them?
When people do Kegels, they just increase the tension down there.
Interesting.
All right. What we need to learn is how to selectively contract or relax the pelvic floor. When you take a deep breath, your diaphragm drops if you know how to belly breathe.
Yeah.
But a lot of people can't belly breathe, right? And so their diaphragm really doesn't drop that much, and they use all these accessory muscles to breathe.
Oh, for the first half of my life, especially being an athlete, I don't think I ever learned how to breathe through my stomach, because I was always so worried about, gymnasts and dancers, like you have to suck in your stomach all the time. Like you have to look like you have a six-pack all the time. And so if I ever took an actual breath, I'd be like, oh, I can't breathe like that. My stomach goes out, And so it's our and I was a professional dancer and athlete, and nobody was teaching me one of the core foundations of how to optimize my body, which is my breath. It's crazy. Yeah.
So not only should your diaphragm drop, but your pelvic floor should drop too, because it's a diaphragm. It doesn't drop a lot, but it should be moving. And that dynamic movement allows you to stay calm. When there's too much tension in the pelvic floor, you're sending a signal up the vagus nerve, right? Saying that, there's something wrong, that, you need to be on alert. And when that signal goes up, it starts shutting down the digestion, and it'll slow down what's called motility, which is how fast something will move through your intestines. And so one of the questions I'm always asking everybody is, are you constipated? And how often are you going to the bathroom? So if you have somebody with gut issues and they're constipated frequently and they drink a lot of water, they most likely have a pelvic floor disorder.
Wow, interesting. And you would say that above even like candida or parasites, or because that's what I had.
All of it. I mean, you definitely want to work with all those things and treat it functionally.
Yeah.
Right. But it'll just come back if you don't treat the underlying issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? When the digestion moves too slow, you're going to promote certain types of organisms over the right kind of organisms, right? Because you're changing the environment. So you're changing like how long they're exposed to oxygen, or how long they're in an anaerobic environment, or how long they're exposed to nutrients, or whatever it is, right? So you're changing the parameters around the microbiome.
Wow.
When you restore stress or get rid of stress and you restore, harmonious balance, now this person is going to move food properly. They're going to release, bile the correct amount, right? They're going to release their enzymes. You're not going to shut down the activity. Things are going to move quickly, and you're not going to run into a lot of these issues. What I'm finding is that when I send people to pelvic floor therapy, at a physical therapy institute with somebody that really knows what they're doing, they get a lot better.
Wow.
And they need to be with a provider that, should be same sex, right? Because it's kind of intimate, but like they get the right treatment so they learn how to relax. And they learn like when they're holding. And that's really huge. And the yoga community kind of drops the ball on this a lot. Not from a knowledge standpoint, but from a practitioner standpoint. And I don't know if you guys have ever taken yoga before.
Yeah.
And they'll say, hold Mula Bandha, right? And so they're like, you better hold Mula Bandha for the whole practice. And that's like clenching basically your whole pelvic floor up. Right? That's not Mula Bandha. It should never be taught that way. And you're going to cause people all kinds of dysfunction. Not only dysfunctions for digestion and stress, but like you were saying, like hormones. You can really mess your hormones up that way. It's not how bandhas were taught originally. Like you're supposed to learn them systematically, and you're supposed to learn those 3 different bandhas in the pelvic floor so that you can isolate the one in the middle that's Mula Bandha and activate it energetically, not this like gross contraction of your pelvic muscles or your pelvic floor muscles. So, and that's what happens when you graduate someone to be a yoga teacher in a month.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've been taking yoga for most of my life, and I've never even heard that word before, which is, crazy. But, so I just, I love, this is such fascinating stuff. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio, and we really are talking about some really fascinating, game-changing stuff when it comes to health and quality of life and longevity, stuff that I've been in the health and wellness world most of my whole life, and things I've never heard before, which is really exciting.
When you talk about let's say there's some yoga practitioners listening right now and they've gone through their training, whether it's a month or they got 300 hours, 500 hours, or 1,000. In your mind, what would you say would be the correct or ideal, because it's supposed to be an internal practice, spiritual practice, what would that, whether it's 10 minutes or an hour, whatever it may be, what was that session intended to be? And I know you spoke about it a little bit, but I'd like to maybe dive in. If someone's listening, like what should it be now, and how is that spiritual practice for you?
I think it's different for, there's different types of yoga, right? So there's all different types of practices. But the one thing I would recommend all these new yoga teachers to do, and even people that have been teaching for a while, is to go back to the sources. Go back to the old ancient texts and actually read them. Don't just read the synopsis of them or the notes that you were given for your teacher training. Actually read the books. There's an old book that's out of print. It's called Mula Bandha, the Master Key. And it goes into bandhas, or what we call energy locks, but it goes into great detail about them. How to isolate them, what are the practices around them, and what are the dangers around them. I think that's really important to do. One of my teachers, Brian Kest, I was having a conversation with him one day in Santa Monica, and I'm like, I'm doing second series Ashtanga, and I'm feeling good. I don't know which should I do next, and who should I practice with, And he just was like looking at me, and he's just like, you need to start practicing on your own. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, I do like 1.5 hour practice Ashtanga every day. He's just like, why don't you just try to roll your mat out on your own, in your own space, without the energy of the yoga studio, without the energy of the teacher, without the energy of the people around you, and see what happens. And he's just like, just do it for half an hour. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so easy. Like, half an hour? I'm like, I do like an hour and a half every day, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, whatever. And you roll your mat out. He's like, there's only one rule. You can't leave your mat. He's like, I don't care if you pout. I don't care if you sit on the ground, whatever you're going to do, you just can't leave your mat. And it was a rude awakening that I didn't have what was necessary to do a strong internal focused practice without the scene and the energy of the people around me.
I feel that.
Right?
I feel that.
And that was my first introduction into spiritual practice and in self-practice. You know, and I'm not saying that when you go to class that you're not getting a good practice. Like you feel amazing, right? And it's great. It's just that when you really want to try to dial in on yourself and do that self mirror reflection, like what's going on inside of me, what's going inside of my mind, what are the repetitive thoughts, what loops am I caught into, right? What damage have I done to my body? You know, what's going on? You need to have a practice like that.
You know what? You know, I'm so glad we're talking about this too, because I remember, you know, there was a moment 6 years ago. I had hit rock bottom. I was changing careers. I'd lost a lot of relationships. Life was falling apart, or really, you know, of course, happening for me. But at the time, it was pouring in all the different ways. And I remember at that time, I wasn't. How can I say? I was scared to be alone. Because of my thoughts, because of like the shadows or my darkness, if you will, the things I didn't want to face, obviously. And I think it reminded me of back at that moment. And I think, you know, whatever people are going through even now with depression, anxiety, PTSD, what have you, like, are we comfortable being by ourselves, whether it's, you know, being still with ourselves, with our thoughts, and or the mat that you're talking about, like literally being on the mat. And so physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually on that mat, what is to come up and being with that. And so that's what's coming up for me, is to like, that's kind of what was going on. Right. And I love that, because I think so many people are just caught up into what's the next thing to do? Okay, yoga, let's do it. And they just kind of get into this practice where I think at the end of the day, what a great, whether it's yoga or anything else, like, the energy of whatever comes up when you're by yourself. I just love that we're talking about, because I think that's not talked about enough or a lot out there. Yeah, it
really isn't. You know, and it's just the foundation again for the clinic, right? So just because my background is in Kung Fu and yoga prior to becoming a physician, and the students that I taught during that time, I saw them change their lives. Right? I saw them become more productive, you know, get a better handle on anxiety, get in better physical shape. I mean, everything, the relationships got better. And not everyone, but the people that were really dedicated and tried. And I'm like, when I went to medicine, I'm like, I want to keep all of this, but I want to build on it, right? I want to be able to replace people's hormones. Right, I want to be able to do things that are going to make them live longer. I want to look into the deep mechanisms in their body biochemically to see, like, is something going to be happening, like cancer or something like that. But this is the foundation. And that foundation is available for everyone if they want to go get it. But you have to be really careful about where you get it and how you do it. Because it's not equal. It's definitely not equal. And you really have to be the judge of whether or not it's truly working or not.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And I really, you know, we've been talking a lot about, you know, kind of these foundational, like, practices, spiritual practices of, you know, being able to be alone with yourself, being alone with your thoughts, feel the feelings, process through them, real, you know, meditation and real relaxation, and how important it is. Would love to kind of switch gears a little bit, just because I know that, you know, even a question from, you know, a client right now that we're working with who has diabetes, who I told you about before the show, you know, for someone like him who, you know, a lot of his anxiety literally comes from the feeling of, oh my gosh, what if I don't have my diabetes medicine? You know, because it is, you know, sometimes expensive, or what if he can't get it somehow? And then what if he goes into a shock and then has to go to the hospital and it might make it, you know, like, and I'm like, wow, that's a real cause of anxiety right there, you know, and, you know, kind of has the thing where he doesn't want to be alone. He's like, I want to go adventure. I want to be doing things all the time. And, you know, we're really working together on having that balance of having that adventure spirit and a very productive, but also balancing it with those peaceful, spiritual, calming practices of just being alone by yourself with your thoughts. for people who struggle with, diabetes or have anxiety, around those kind of issues, what would you, any tips, tools, tricks, pieces of advice you could give them, and maybe tapping into some of the things we talked about beforehand, before the show started?
Sure. Anxiety and fear are pretty much the same thing. When you ever see those statues, like Buddhist statues or Hindi statues, like from the East, and a lot of them have a hand up like this. You seen that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this hand means no fear. And fear is an obstacle to enlightenment. And it's the first obstacle. It's the first chakra. It's the pelvic floor.
Fear is the obstacle to enlightenment. I love that. I just wanted to repeat that again. I think that's so cool. Yeah.
So you got fear. Fear is associated with first chakra. First chakra is associated with pelvic floor. You got a pattern. Right?
Yeah.
Spiritual practices are supposed to give you control over the pelvic floor. Right? So that you're not holding all of this fear and anxiety and having it send a signal to put you into fight or flight and take you out of health.
Yeah.
So these are all related. So a lot of those people we send, and we get them into good biofeedback therapy, because when you start learning to get into coherence, well, you're working on your pelvic floor, because you can't have your pelvic floor contracted and be able to get into coherence. It won't work. So you have to learn how to relax it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can go to pelvic floor physical therapy, and they can help you even further with that.
Yeah.
So those are the things you want to do. The other thing you want to do with people is, all right, I have a fear around this, or I have a fear around that. All right, fair enough. It's probably a valid fear. Right? Running out of my diabetic medicine, especially if you're on insulin, well, that would suck, right? You could die. So what is the chance of that happening? Right? And so then you have to just take people down a logical road. Like, okay, what are the chances of every single pharmacy being closed? Right? Probably pretty minimal. What's the chance of you not having a backup bottle at your house? Right? What can you do to have multiple bottles in different places? Well, that's pretty easy, right? And so you just go through all these scenarios and you say there's a plan. Because if you allow that fear to get a hold of you, well, that's going to take you out. And I don't know if you guys are aware of a physician. Her name's Dr. Lissa Rankin.
Oh, no.
No.
You guys should talk to her.
Yeah.
So she wrote a book called Mind Over Medicine. And she did a lot of research into the placebo effect, into even more what's called the nocebo effect.
Yeah, nocebo for sure.
So placebo, everybody knows, right? Here's a sugar pill. I believe it's going to help me. 50% of the time it helps me. But very few people really understand how powerful the nocebo effect is. So the nocebo effect is the opposite of the placebo. You're going to give me this medicine. Well, I'm scared of that medicine. I think that medicine is really going to harm me. What do you think the chances are of that sugar pill that I told you is a medicine, and you think it's going to harm you? What do you think is going to happen to you?
It's going to harm
90% of the 90, not 50, 90% of the time,
90.
you get a negative outcome.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
The nocebo effect has been tracked where it's actually caused death.
Wow.
Yes. So the fear of dying can be so great that you actually die.
Wow. So repeating that again, if you're afraid, if you have a fear around taking a certain medicine or doing a certain thing, it could literally, you create your own destiny. You create your own reality of like, I had this fear. It was so strong. I made it real for myself.
Yeah. And 90%.
90%.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think people need to just have that echo so much right now because of what's happening now in the world and, just being cognizant of that and aware of that. Yep. That's where it starts. So I appreciate you sharing that because there's so many just people that are not thinking critically for themselves, not doing their own research or due diligence or not being with who they are, that they are powerful beings. Yeah. And knowing that they can control or co-create certain outcomes in their life. And I think, not just having people, whoever it is, friends, family, strangers, media, whatever it is, just to force feed anything into your system, to be careful as to what you're ingesting because of what you're saying now. So thank you so much for...
think about what you're ingesting, because we also, one of my favorite things that came up on a recent episode was that it's not necessarily what we do, it's our relationship to what we do that matters, right? Which is exactly this. If I think this food is is bad for me and I have a fear around eating it because I think carbs are bad. Even if carbs are bad or they're not bad, like my belief about it or my stress, you know, so many people out there that struggle with body image issues or relationship to food issues, you know, they're scared to eat certain things. Would you say that the fear of the food being good or bad for them is really doing more so than what it actually is in reality?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, fear is the number one thing you have to work on. You have to get rid of it. It doesn't really help you.
Yeah.
You know, once in a while, it'll give you a little information like, you know, don't get too close to the cliff.
Yeah.
Right. But like, you know, most of the time it's not reasonable. And so we want to definitely address that stuff.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that we do, and we give people these exercises to do. There's a thing, I don't know, you know, Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. Love it.
Right. So, you know, he's got some really great lectures, and he's even got some better online tools. And the one tool he has that I give everyone is self-authoring. Self-authoring is a fantastic, you know, practice. And honestly, a lot of people won't do it because it takes too much time. It takes about 6 hours. And you can't do it all at once. You want to do it over a slow period of time. But it allows you to like look at the patterns of your life and which patterns have been productive and helpful to you and which patterns have been destructive. And then when you build out your future authoring of the way that you want to live your life and the things that you want to accomplish, you try to do that with the positive patterns that you've had in your lifetime, mostly when you were younger, that led to success. And you don't really focus on bad stuff. Like, don't focus on trying to get rid of bad behavior. Try to focus on encouraging good behavior. It works a lot better. You know, it's like, if you busy your whole day up, you know, with the things that are productive, say like, okay, I'm going to wake up at this time, I'm going to do my yoga practice, or I'm going to do my meditation, right? I'm going to take my supplements, right? I'm going to eat this way, right? And I'm going to create my intentions and affirmations, and then I'm going to go about my day. And then you have your check-ins. I'm going to do my breathing in between. Like, we try to give people these practices. You don't have to focus on getting rid of bad stuff because these new things, these beneficial things will replace it.
Yeah.
All right.
I love that we're talking.
It's a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly kind of like really what's on the guests and the people that we bring in. It's like, you know, we feel like the societal norm in media, for instance, they're focused on more of the toxic and unhealthy, you know, failed relationships.
Yeah.
Where we want to focus on more of the conscious, healthy, fun, connected relationships, whether it's to self, others, or the world around us, because we understand that what we focus on expands.
Yep.
So any focus, like even the
these
focus that you're
louder.
talking about right now, it's like, focus on the good stuff. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, even in a relationship, right? Like, people keep loops in their head about things that have been tragic, right? Whether it's traumatic or a bad relationship or a horrible situation, like they keep replaying it again and again and again in their head. You can't just extract it. You know, you're not Harry Potter or Dumbledore. You can't just pull those things out of your head, right? So you just have to like focus on, how am I going to act differently? And when these negative things start to, you know, they call them demons or whatever you want to call them, you just call it out. You have to have a name for it. Like, I see you. You're not going to get me, right? Because I'm busy doing this, right? I've already thought about that 100,000 times. I don't need to think about it again. Come up with anything new.
Yeah.
It's not going to be helpful, right? But you have to get to that point where you're not doing this.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point of the show, right?
Like, focus forward.
The whole point, like being a renegade, which we'll get to your renegade moment later in the show, but is about like that thing about choosing differently, you know, about not staying stuck in what I call like the spinning wheel of death, which is like the spinning wheel, the loop of thought of like, oh, I should have done that. What if I did that different? Like, you know, trying to change things that we can't control. So, you know, if someone's listening, and I want to get into, you know, we're getting into the rapid fire segment shortly because of that. It's one of a super fun segment. But someone's listening right now and they're like, okay, I'm getting all the spiritual stuff, but like, what do I do about like, you know, how much vitamin C should I be taking? How much vitamin D should I be taking? Like, if my hormones are off, like, should I do dairy? Should I not be gluten? Like, what are the main things that just kind of we realize that this is about personalized medical engineering,
Sure.
right? But as an overall thing for just humans in the world that we live in today, is there things that people can do in their lifestyle and their food changes that pretty much across the board could be helpful for someone to improve their quality of life?
Absolutely. So there's different tiers, and it depends on how old you get. So the most important thing for everyone to understand is that the older you get, the faster you get old. When you go from 20 years old to 30 years old, almost nothing happens to you. Right? Like, how many 30-year-old professional athletes or Olympians are there? A ton of them.
Yeah.
Right? How many 40-year-old Olympians are there? Not a lot.
Not as much.
How many 50-year-old? How many 50-year-olds?
Yeah, not
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe one.
right.
It's super rare, right?
Yeah.
So as you get older faster. You ever see somebody that was like 70 years old and they're golfing and they just retired and everything's great and they seem pretty healthy, and then you see them at 80, right? And all this cognitive decline, and now they're not moving around as well.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, whoa, what happened? It's only been 10 years.
Yeah.
You accumulate this stuff called senolytic cells.
Senolytic
And
cells.
you can only, and so senolytic cells, we call them zombie cells. They multiply, and when they get to a certain percentage of your cells, you die. So the older you get, the faster they grow. When you're young, you don't have very many of them. So there's age reversal medicine that we have today. And it's only been around for about 3 or 4 years, really.
Oh, wow.
And so we use that on people 50 years old and older. We can probably start using it on people that are younger populations, but we still want to just stay with this population right now. And you can actually change someone's biological age by doing these programs. So we have testing now that looks at what is your biological age versus your chronological age. So, you might be 42, but biologically you might be 50. Or you biologically, if you're really taking care of yourself and balancing everything and you have good genes, a lot of that has to do with genes, you might be 10 years younger than that biologically. So we want to know where that is.
What's yours?
It's just bam.
I mean, come on, we got the people want
16
to know.
years old. Well, your spirit tells us you're young.
My chronological age is 53.
Okay.
And my biological age is in my mid-40s.
All
See,
right,
that's
there
so
it
cool.
is.
So people listening can know that there's hope, right? That you could be a certain biological age, but that you, through these different things of lifestyle and food and spiritual practices, you can literally turn back the hands of time when he's actually only his mid-40s.
Well, I think a lot of people don't realize that though when we speak about the masses. Like we were talking offline right before the show that how we've been like biohacking, for lack of a better word, for 9+ years. But it was because when I first found out, I'm not stuck with the brain I have right now. I'm not stuck with the the gene expressions or all that I can influence my biology, psychology, everything by all the things we're talking about now. And so if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio, talking to Dr. Alexander from the Pazio Institute.
Yes. Continue on with the things.
Yes.
So you said, after 50, it's good to know about these, what do you call it, symbiotic cells or anti-aging?
Senolytic. Yeah, so senolytic cells are the cells that you want to get rid of when you get older. They're really only necessary for repairing certain injuries. Okay. And they're necessary when you were conceived, because you have to take this little ball of cells and you have to turn it into a human.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's really complicated, right? So you fold this cell on top of those cells. You have to get rid of the cells in the middle to make a cavity for something.
Yeah.
So you need senolytic cells because they degrade stuff and they have a purpose.
Wow.
But for some reason, they get out of control when we get older and they start wildly populating. And they cause all kinds of damage to cells next to them. And they have this, they call them zombie cells because they can infect a good cell to become a senolytic cell.
Wow.
Interesting.
And so that's why we have senolytic therapy.
The zombie apocalypse is going on in our body.
Right? So going on, So the older you get, the more of a zombie you become.
Wow. So
Man.
crazy. So what about people who okay, so I'm in my 30s, right? And a lot of women out there, especially, I've learned recently the difference between, that there is a huge epidemic, and especially in women's health, because there's so much misinformation about women's health specifically. So can you talk about maybe well, let me ask you this. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with for me, I guess what I've been learning recently is that I used to, I was really trying the keto thing because for a lot of men, it really worked. And a lot of the media was like, oh, keto. And then intermittent fasting has also been a huge thing, especially in the biohacking world and I totally understand how it is really helpful in, cleaning out the system and, anti-aging. But for women in their reproductive years, do you think that that is a whole different class of recommendation, or that there would be other things that maybe women in the reproductive years need to know? Because I've also heard that recently it could be harmful to hormones, or it could be harmful to the reproductive system, or it could be harmful to, and why so many women struggle with hormonal issues and infertility.
A lot of questions.
I know. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so fascinated with this.
Rachel loves the 5-part questions.
I love the 5-part questions.
I got
you can't remember all of that.
I got the gist. So when it comes to diet, intermittent fasting wins.
Okay.
For the people out there that want to do some more research and want to watch some really good footage on this, they can go to age-reversal.net.
Okay.
And they can just look at Bill Falloon's slides. Bill Falloon is the owner of Life Extension. And they've done tons of research into supplements. They've also gone up against the FDA to make supplements legal. The FDA has tried to make supplements a pharmaceutical many times. Could you imagine if you had to go to the pharmacy to get your vitamin D, how much that would cost?
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Yeah.
Or if you had to go get your B vitamins from the pharmacy, how much that would cost? You would never be able to do age reversal or functional medicine protocols if they were pharmaceuticals. It would be astronomical.
Wow.
I mean, it's already very expensive with pharmaceutical grade supplements, which most people don't get.
Right.
But anyways, to get back to your question, we have so much data now in intermittent fasting that what we found is that the 6-hour window is the best window. And what's really funny to me is just knowing that what the Shaolin monks would do and what some of the Buddhist monks would do, and even some of the Christian saints or Christian monks, they wake up at the crack, right? They'll wake up before the sun comes up because they feel like that's the most powerful spiritual part of the day. And it's a really great time to do some breathing. Well, guess what? The air is the cleanest, right?
Yeah.
If you look at air quality data, right? So they wake up, they do all their practices, physical, all that kind of stuff. And then somewhere around 9 or so, they have breakfast. Then they have a really nice lunch. And they have some really small dinner around 3 or 4. And then they're done until the next day, right? So from 4 to the time they go to bed, they've been fasting. So if you don't have any food in your system for at least 4 hours before you go to bed, we know you sleep a lot better, you snore less, you have much better deep sleep, more REM sleep, all of it. But your average American is eating right before they go to bed.
That's so hard for me.
I'm so glad you're talking about this, Dr. Alexander. My love.
I have the hardest time. I feel like I've gotten so good and I can eat so clean and I could, even fast the whole first part of the day. But when it comes to and I know it's a psychological thing. I grew up that it's a habitual psychological thing that I feel like I need something before I go to sleep.
That's usually spiritual.
Yeah, so I got to work on some pelvic floor stuff, I guess.
And so, you get, when you want to feel better, you eat something.
Yeah.
Right? Because you get a release of your own opiates. But you want to be able to turn your opiate mechanism on without food. So anyways, what people have done here with intermittent fasting is they're eating at noon or 1, and then they'll stop at 7 or something like that.
Right.
Right? Which is fine because it works better because people have to do dinner and stuff like that. They can't eat that early and stop eating that early, and they don't wake up that early. So it's fine. I just try to get people to not eat 4 hours before they go to bed.
Right.
If you can eat in that 6-hour window, that's the best. The thing with women is if you told a guy that he was going to eat once, and not every guy, just a lot of men, you're going to eat one big meal a day, they wouldn't have a problem with getting 2,000 calories in one meal. right? But most women, if you told them to get all of their calories in this short period of time, they're not going to do it because they're mostly grazers, right? And that's the problem with a lot of women when you say, okay, I want you to do plant-based, I want you to do intermittent fasting. They're so concerned about portion size. When you go from animal product to plant product, animal, you had this much mass and it had this much calories. And when you go to plant, it had this much mass and has this many calories.
Right.
So you have to get over the mass thing. It's not that like, oh, your genetics say that you have to eat meat and you can eat plants. It's like everyone can eat plants. I mean, like you're designed to eat plants. Like your teeth are designed to eat plants. Your digestive system is designed to eat plants. All your ancestors ate plants. It's like you're a plant eater.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, you're really you're not really even an omnivore because your jaw goes back and forth. There's no true omnivores that their jaw's not locked. We're just mostly scavengers and plant eaters, and we like eating tubers and barks and fruits and all that kind of stuff.
So would you say then to people that would you advise more of a like strictly plant-based, like no meat at all, or what's the?
So I kind of go off the China bit. I'm vegan, so I've been vegan almost 25 years, and I stay away from gluten, and we can get into that later.
Yeah.
And it's mostly due to the spraying of glyphosate all over everything. Glyphosate really has some nasty things, not only on us, but on our progeny. And you can talk to Dr. Zach Bush about that. He's the expert.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why everyone should take his product, Ion Biome, every day.
Yeah.
But people they want to eat certain meat. And I'm like, okay, look at the China study. If you look at the China study, and that's, all these people in China and like almost 1 billion people of data. The people that could get their food down to like around 15 or 20% animal products and the rest of it plants were just about as healthy as the people that did all plants. So, and when we look at it, and now there's more data that we're getting from the Microbiome Project, and they're looking into it. I think a lot of it has to do with what microbiome grows in your gut from what food you're feeding it. So, and it's not a perfect, example, but it's applicable to this. You walk into a forest, you pick up all the dead leaves, and you smell them, and they smell good to you. That's a whole bunch of bacteria breaking down all that stuff, right? And yeasts and all kinds of stuff. But it smells good to you because those types of things that are breaking down those plants are beneficial to you. They're symbiotic. They break down the plant so that they're more digestible. They make vitamins for you. They protect you against other viruses and bacteriums. They could protect you from toxins. They create a barrier on the inside of your intestines that provide you protection against the cells that touch everything. So they do all kinds of really great things for you. And then you walk further and you find a dead animal, and you pick that dead animal up and you smell it. Well, it doesn't smell so good, right? Because those are putrefactive bacteriums. And when they grow inside of you, they do nothing for you, right? And when there's nothing left for them to eat, guess what they want to eat? You, right? So when you mostly give yourselves animal products, that means that you make those bacteriums dominant. And the bacteriums that are actually beneficial for you can't fight against them because they don't have enough food. So if you feed the bacteriums that are beneficial to you and you kind of starve the bad ones, well, then you have a really good, robust microbiome. And guess what your microbiome does? Just about everything, right? It changes your mood, and it works on depression. It works on your inflammation. It works against cancer. I mean, like everything's based on your microbiome in your gut and how healthy you're going to be. So you want to do everything you can to promote a good microbiome. And now we have testing so we can actually see what your microbiome looks like. And you can use good quality bacillus spores to help that out. You can use good prebiotics. You can use mucosal barrier stuff, but mostly it's from food. You want to make sure that your food is mostly plant-based.
And so that's something that you work with people on, right? Like it's a full thing that, when they go to see you, that's what I love about what is so different about how you guys operate is full spectrum, lifestyle, diet, nutrition, genetics, peptides, like spirituality practices. It's like the whole thing, how everything affects everything, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, consults here, it's rarely less than an hour and a half. There's just too much material to go through, and people's, their dietary recommendations and how we want them to eat sprouts and, how we want them to do intermittent fasting. And I try to get most of my clients to do water fasting once a month. I personally do a 4.5 day water fast every month.
Wow.
It does really fantastic things. It turns on genes that never get turned on. Humans, we have a fantastic capacity to withstand famine. But how many people that you know of, unless they intentionally did that, had to go more than a day without food? Almost no one, right? But all of our ancestors had to do that when they left Africa because food was not plenty. And so the people that survived have really fantastic genes for famine. Well, guess what? When you take a group of people that have really great genes for famine, and then you feed them from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed every single day, every day, and you give them a surplus of calories, what do you think is going to happen to them?
There's some disruption.
Yeah,
Disruption. They're going against their whole,
Yes.
Right? So when you're in a famine state, you have different genes that run. Those genes fix your DNA, they get rid of intracellular junk, extracellular junk, they remodel things. It's kind of like the maintenance crew coming in and cleaning up, right? And the engineers coming in repairing things. And if you never go through that state, well, those mechanisms are compromised and they don't run as long or as intensely as they should. So putting water fasting in people's schedule, and it gives them mastery over hunger. It's a powerful, powerful spiritual practice.
Yeah.
Because you're like, okay, look, I know I can go a month without food, right? We know the studies, right? I can only go with air for a very short period of time. I can't go without water for a few days, but I can go without food for over a month, right? There's plenty of people even in recent years that have gone without food, that have gone on, food strikes and stuff like that, have been held captive. So we know it's possible. So you're just trying to tell someone to do a 3-day water fast and they freak out. And they're like, oh no, I need this or I need that. No, you don't. You just need to believe in yourself and keep yourself hydrated and keep yourself busy, and you'll find that you're just fine.
Yeah.
And the more that you do it, the easier it becomes, and your body learns again what it was already supposed to be doing since the time you were born.
Yeah. And I love
the time you've done a few of them, you're good at it.
And I love that instills so much for the mind and body for themselves. I think so many people have gotten their power taken away. And I think this incredible practice that's good for their physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual health, gives them confidence to have more control. Oh, wow, I can do this. And it's what's the next thing and the next thing? And I think given the time right now, I want to make sure that we cover on all these things and get into our favorite finds that we're just talking about. But for those listening, we're going to continue to talk about all the things that Dr. Alexander at the Pazio Institute does. Rachel alluded to them earlier, but I think a lot of people don't realize that, and maybe this is just my opinion, but I feel like the future is here. A lot of the times it just hasn't been distributed yet, or there's so many people that are not aware of it, such as some of the things that you guys do, if those are just for people who just joined us right now, whether it's age reversal medicine, hormone replacement, stem cell therapeutics, cognitive optimization, sexual optimization, sports performance, IV therapy, and I'm so glad that you guys do this as well, the ketamine psychotherapy, and all the wonderful things that it can do for mental health and more. And so we'll be talking about a few of these things when we get back from our favorite find segment. But, I think it's just important because as we age, like we were talking about from 50 plus, a lot of our audience is 50 plus. And it's what are the things that we can do now to take care of ourselves? And so stay tuned with us, guys, right after our favorite finds.
Well, we're going to go into rapid fire. We didn't even do rapid fire.
Not favorite finds. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire.
That's at the end of the show, guys.
Yeah.
And you're going to just not like me at all, but I have to ask because I'm confused. Right? Before we get into rapid fire, only because I've been on this hormonal health journey, right? And recently we just had, I don't know if you're familiar with Alyssa Vitti, but her work in women's health. She's a women's health hormone expert. And really, learned from her how much women in their reproductive years have been kind of ignored in all the research and all the study when it comes to things like intermittent fasting or, any sort of like fitness, like diet research, that most of the time in the research, they're including men and postmenopausal women. So they're not taking into account the female cycle and how different our hormones are depending on different cycles. And I've noticed, when I've done different fasting, at the beginning of my cycle, it's way easier for me to fast. At the second part of my cycle, it's like, feels impossible. And, learning from her just, in her methodology, that it can be actually harmful if women are doing fasting, especially a 3-day fast during their cycle, during their actual I
agree.
So what would you, I was just your thoughts on that, because I'm here, you're talking about it and I'm like, wait, but I'm so confused because I just,
So cycling women, I tell them to start their fast on the first day of bleeding.
Really? Okay.
It makes their cycle go by a lot easier. Okay. And it doesn't affect changing your cycle. So your cycle is dependent upon nutrients. Got it. So, when you're going on a fast in like the later part, like the luteal part of your cycle, where your body's, preparing for implantation and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be like, well, there's no calories here right now. So I'm just going to shed this lining and start all over again. Right. Cause I don't want to get pregnant right now. So the way that we work around that is you just wait till you bleed your first day and you just start fasting that. And then you don't affect it at all. As far as hormone replacement goes, we have like almost 28 years now of data of bioidentical hormone replacement. The people that get their hormones replaced, they are not even comparable to their peer group, right? Their skin's better, their organs are better, their brain's better, their body mass is better. I mean, like across the board, they're just better optimized humans. Without hormone replacement, you can't compete with them. So we want to be able to do that. Now, there are some people out there that are trying to mimic a woman's cycle with their hormones. It's not necessary, right? Your hormones only fluctuate so that you can get pregnant, right? So that your uterus can change in its thickness and that your ovaries can get ready to get an egg ready and all that kind of stuff. Those hormones are not designed to optimize like your brain and your bones and your heart and all that kind of stuff. We can give you the right amount of hormone for that, and it can be a static amount. So you don't have to have these fluctuations. Most of your hormone receptors are in your brain. And so they actually have an effect on mood and the way that you think and everything like that. Yeah. And how women can be pretty stable with their mood and the way that they act every day is astounding to me, because I know that their hormones are all over the place depending on what part of their cycle they are. Yeah. And I know that they're all affecting the way that their brain functions, right? And I think a lot of guys, they need to take that into account, because like if you change a guy's testosterone throughout the month and he had high testosterone from one part of the month and then roll over the other, they'd be a nightmare.
For sure, man.
I wish that we could do that, just so that men could experience what we go through.
Yep.
Right. And so when I'm looking at women and men too, I never mess really around with their hormones unless there's something really, really serious until after the age of 35. And usually from 35 to 40, I'll just try to optimize with supplements and lifestyle and things like that. And then after 40, I start supplementing with things. And not that you don't need it. Like some women in their late 30s, they're really dropping off their progesterone, right? And that means they're going to gain body weight with water. They're going to hold on to water. They're going to feel bloated. They're not going to sleep well. They're going to be more anxious. You lose DHEA and pregnenolone kind of early, so those are easy to replace. But you don't really lose estrogen. Estrogen's much later, unless you had a hysterectomy or something like that.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I find the most potent in both sexes is testosterone. You have to optimize testosterone in both sexes or you're going to shrink all your tissues. Testosterone to me is the most important of all the hormones to maintain. It maintains your body mass, your brain mass, your cognitive thinking. Women always tell me when I give them their testosterone, they're like, you took away my brain fog. It's gone. I can think clearly now. Yeah. And they're like, and my energy's back. Yeah. And my libido's back. So many women, they're always coming in and they're like, my libido is completely shot. right? And a lot of that really is due to stress, and it's not due to loss of hormone. And it's also due to really not engaging in those practices.
Yeah.
Right? So if you don't use it, your body downregulates.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to have sex once a month. Well, guess what? You're not going to have much of a libido.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
These are all
of going into that.
No, yeah, appreciate that. And so I think hormones and hormone replacement, I'm glad that you brought that up too, like as to when, someone should test and or check in, to maybe, have the idea of, should I have some hormone replacement? But, kind of maybe even like at 35 to 40, and then after 40, maybe really kind of checking in to see if that's an option for them.
Yeah, I mean, I usually try to check people multiple times a year. For women, I have them test on day 21 of their cycle, because that's when their progesterone and their estrogens are pretty high. So we can see like where they're at. So it depends on what day of your cycle you get your labs drawn, whether or not you can do something about it.
Yeah.
And not only do we do blood labs, but we do urine metabolite labs, which are even more important because they can show us how your hormones that are being made are being metabolized in your liver and whether or not that's going to lead to problems with DNA damage and cancer.
Wow.
So rather than just waiting for some little blip to show up on a mammogram, you could have seen that 5 years earlier from the metabolism of your estrogen and your genes and done something about it.
Yeah, proactiveness. I love that. It's not about putting a Band-Aid on something. It's really about being proactive so you don't ever even need the Band-Aid.
Yeah, and we just need to keep talking about more of this because this stuff does exist.
Yes.
Is at your institute, and we want to talk more. Right now we're going to get to know you a little bit better with a rapid fire, and then we'll continue to chat here.
We'll finally get there. We have like 15 minutes left of the show.
No.
Okay. All right.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, we have a little bit more time.
More important. So rapid fire segment. It's just quick questions you have to answer fast. So no thinking. These are gut reactions.
Oh, God.
So, babe, take it away.
All right. So a lot of the times we choose to just kind of go in the present moment because all we ever have is the present moment. So in the present moment, the first thing that's coming to my mind for rapid fire, even for us, is so Dr. Alexander, what is your favorite element and why?
My favorite element would be carbon.
Oh.
Without it, we have no life. And without it, we can't really do a detox.
Boom. Great answer. All right.
I love that. All right. So we've been talking a lot about food on the show and like what to eat, what not to eat. What is your favorite food and what is your least favorite food?
I don't know if I have a favorite food. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so not maybe the favorite, but a favorite.
A favorite food of mine. Does this be like a cheat meal?
How about when you're having a bad day? Like, what's your go-to?
Cheat meal would probably be vegan gluten-free pizza.
Hey, all right.
I love it.
Homemade, of course. I mean, I don't really I guess foods I don't like would be animal products. But I don't really have a lot of foods I don't like that are vegan.
Got it.
I'm just a weirdo, I guess. And I just...
No, that's good.
No,
that's good.
I always find the joy in most food.
Yes, awesome. In good, healthy vegan food, you'll find the joy in it.
Yeah,
mostly. I mean, I guess I don't expose myself to foods that I don't like.
There you go. Awesome.
So next fire question would be, let's see. So if you had, because we only have so much time in the day, right? If you had, an additional half day, let's say, right? So we have your full day. You have another, let's say we have another 6 hours, right? You have an extended amount of time now,
and energy too, probably, right?
Yeah. What would be a practice that you would undertake? What would be a new practice that you would like to dive into and take the time in that mastery level that I know that you talk about, right? Really loving the journey, right? It could be a new musical instrument. It could be like a new kind of you're into the martial art. What would be a new practice you would take and why?
Well, I'd have to move back to Grand Cayman, but I would love to take up skin diving.
Skin diving.
I think that it's really spiritual, and you dive in. So you're in nature, right? You're just like the inhabitants of the sea because you're not blowing bubbles everywhere. You're doing a breath holding exercise. you're mastering your breath, you're mastering your emotions, your fear, because you're underwater without any air, right? And you're experiencing nature in its glory all around you. So I think that, it's a really fantastic practice, and you're hitting everything. It's like breathing exercise, physical exercise, spiritual exercise, immersion in nature, all of it.
That's cool.
Yeah, if I had extra time and I lived by the ocean, I would definitely.
I love it. And you called it skin diving.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you want to call it.
Is it like, I guess when you were saying that, it's like free diving, right? But
free diving, yeah.
I'd never heard of skin diving.
But do you have to be naked? Like, is that part of the thing?
Yeah, skin diving also, like you're in your birthday suit?
Your birthday suit diving.
I probably wouldn't do that.
That's what I thought about.
I've been around fish too much, and they like all kinds of stuff. So.
Okay, awesome. One of my favorite questions to ask rapid fire is, if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Any superpower I want. You can get greedy and be like Captain Marvel.
Right? Everything.
If I wasn't greedy, I'd probably want to be like, I'd probably want to be able to read other people's minds.
Yeah, that would be fun.
All right.
It would allow me to help people so much better.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Have to filter through all the crap that they give me, because it's not they're trying to lie to me, it's that they've been lying to themselves for so long.
Yes.
Yeah.
That they really don't know the truth anymore.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to be able to just carve through all of that and just know what's going on so that I can treat them properly.
Yeah.
I love that. Little telekinesis, little mind reading. I think yesterday there was a post I saw of I'm going to mess up the pronunciation of it, but if you actually typed it out, it would be sidereal time. And I don't know if you're familiar with the sidereal time, and it's like I think our position of when we are facing the center of the galaxy or something like that. And without going too deep, it was like during that time, a lot of people had more abilities to mind read or telekinesis or remote viewing or what have you. I don't know, random thing, but you brought up, being able to mind read, and I remember when you looked at not our local time, but really this sidereal time, you had more of an ability to do so.
Wow.
Huh.
I
don't know.
Have you heard about that? Okay. Something to check out.
Something to check out. Well, and just because of time, we really love also these renegade moments, and I know we're jumping right into it, but I'm so interested of what your renegade moment is, because the renegade moment being like the moment when you maybe got sick and tired of being sick and tired, or that opportunity where you really chose different and it pretty much changed maybe the trajectory of your life. Can you talk about what a renegade moment was for you?
I think I've had a few of them. I'll tell you about one of them. So I had left Chicago and I was living in Boulder, and I lived in this house, and it was called Chrysalis Cooperative, and you had to be an activist, you had to be a Vipassana meditator, and you had to do Vipassana meditation every day or 6 days a week with the group. So activist, vegan, and Vipassana meditator.
Wow.
So it was an amazing group of people to live with, and during that time I was working I was going to Richard Freeman's Ashtanga yoga studio every morning. And then I would go to the Shaolin Kung Fu school at night. And I had sold my business, so I didn't really have to worry about money for a while.
Nice.
So my life was basically, I would wake up, I'd have a cup of tea, I'd go sit in the backyard, some of the animals would come around, I'd grab my mat, I'd go do yoga, I'd come back, I'd make the breakfast, I'd sit in Vipassana meditation, work on a couple of activist things, maybe go ride my mountain bike or go rock climbing, go around, do some things, and then go do some Kung Fu at night and go to bed. And I felt incredible.
Yeah. It sounds like the life.
You're describing heaven to me right now. Were you in heaven? Yeah.
So I was basically in heaven, and I felt so good at that time that I actually threw my mattress away because I thought it was crippling me. And I slept on a camping mat because I was just so open. I'd be like, oh my God, I was so stretched out and I felt so good when I went to bed, and now I'm tight. And I go, I think it's this mattress, and so I just got rid of it.
Wow.
And you get so dialed in when you do things like that I would lay down in the same position that I'd wake up in. and I never needed an alarm. I just woke up exactly at the same time every day.
Wow.
And so one day I was just sitting there and I'm like, I feel amazing. My body's working perfectly. I don't have stress. I mean, everything's great, but I don't have purpose. Right? I'm like, I went to school, right? I have all this knowledge, right? What am I going to do? I want to do something profound. Like I want to use all this knowledge that I have, and I want to share it with people, and I want to do something. And so that was the point that got me to go back to school, to do neuroscience, to do biochemistry, to go to med school, and then to go on and do functional medicine, regenerative, and stem cells and peptides and all of it. And then try to create a new system, which is medical engineering, so that we could do it in a proper way rather than this fragmented way that was problem-based.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I love that story.
I love that you meant, I think, so many people don't realize, first of all, thanks for sharing that. I think it's so profound because, what we talk about a lot of times too is, a lot of people don't know what's important to them, values, or they don't know what their vocation is, what life is asking of them, really their purpose. And I think one of the ways that we talk about how to co-create the love and lifestyle they've always wanted to is with these 5 Ps. And without going into them right now, one of the 5 Ps is purpose for that reason. And I think when people find their purpose and are value aligned, then life gets a lot easier, and there's a bigger force driving the bus. And and
not
it's
even easier, but I think just fulfilling, right? Because you had it easy. You were doing all the things that you loved.
Oh, that's so easy.
But it's that fulfillment.
Yeah, no, it's really, and the one thing that I guess the really difficult part about that there's a lot of trepidation around that for me when I was in that position. I'm like, all right, if I go back to school, if I go to med school, if I do all this stuff, I'm not going to be this person, right? I'm not going to be able to wake up at the crack and have my little cup of tea and sit outside. I'm not going to be able to spend, an hour and a half to 2 hours of doing Ashtanga. I won't be able to sit in Vipassana meditation. I won't be able to do Kung Fu for all these hours. I won't have time in the mountains to go play. I'm not going to have all of that. I'm like, so what's going to happen to my spirit? And how am I going to keep my spirit intact going through all of this stuff? Because, I knew that it was going to be tough. I knew medical school was going to be really tough. I had no idea how hard residency was going to be.
Yeah.
Right? And how that much taxes you and the demands placed on you and the long hours and being tired.
Yeah, my brother's in it right now.
See,
right?
I know it firsthand.
It's typical.
It's like, I feel like he's going through torture.
Yeah.
And he has it easy. Right?
Yeah.
Comparatively. And I had it easy compared to the guys from the 60s and 70s. I mean, they called it a resident because you would basically live in the hospital.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? When I was a resident, the longest shift you could do is a 30-hour shift. Right? You could technically be in that hospital for 36, but you could only see new patients for 30 hours.
Dang.
Right now, the new rules are you can't be in the hospital for more than 12. Right?
Wow.
So, which is smart.
Yeah. Very smart. Very smart.
I mean, believe me, going down to the emergency room and checking somebody in when you've been up for 27, 28 hours, you're scared.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I'm not thinking that clear. And you're like, okay, I need to check every box and I need to be really clear and make sure that I'm not making any mistakes.
Yeah, that is crazy. And I wouldn't want a doctor working with me that was on no sleep, I'd be like, go sleep.
But in the old days, that's how I did it. You might meet a resident that hadn't been to bed for 2 days.
Yeah, so crazy.
Right? And they might have to, and they did their job, which was amazing.
Yeah, so incredible. All right, so getting into our last segment, favorite find. So this is literally any sort of favorite find. Could be a book, a poem, a practice, whatever favorite finds you want to share with the audience.
Sure. Well, this find actually came and found me. His name's Darren Olean. I don't know if you guys are aware of him.
No.
He brought this thing called the Baruka nut.
Oh, I love
Baruka nuts. I know him. Yes.
I love the Baruka nuts.
Wait, the guy who created, because he did a documentary also too, right? With Zach Zach.
Zach Efron.
Zach Efron. Yeah.
Yes.
We love that documentary.
Yeah. So he had me on his podcast and introduced me to his Brooke nuts or Baru nuts, which are not nuts, they're legumes.
So good.
But they taste like a nut.
Yeah.
And if you look up their nutritional data, it's unbelievable. It just blows your mind away, right? Like less than half the fat of a nut, like massive amounts of protein, tons of fiber, tons of antioxidants, really high levels of vitamin E, which, you know, in nature, there's 8 different kinds of vitamin E, but when most people take vitamin E as a supplement, it's only one kind.
Oh, wow.
So then it's not the right balance. So and you can just look it up on his website on Baru nuts. It's fantastic. So I think that was great. And the other thing I really liked about it is most agricultural processes stink. You know, where like they're damaging the soil, they're using pesticides or herbicides, they're damaging the ecology around the area. Whereas in the harvesting of Baru nuts, you're actually increasing biodiversity, you're helping out local populations. So it's a win all around.
I love that.
That's an incredible find.
Yeah, that is. Everybody should check that. So Brooke nuts, they're so good. Yeah, such a great find.
And if you guys are just tuning in, you're listening to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio, and we've been talking to Dr. Alexander from the Pazio Institute, and we've shared so many great things, and we've touched on a lot of the things, well, a few things that they do at the Institute. We've talked about how this is an incredible part 1. We'd love for you guys to stay for a part 2 where we really dive deeper into everything that they're doing and all the success that they're having with age reversal medicine, the hormone replacement that we talked about earlier on the show, getting more in depth with the stem cell therapeutics, cognitive optimization. We touched a little bit about the pelvic floor, but really kind of going into the sexual optimization, especially within relationships. And as we get older, sports performance, IV therapy, and of course, ketamine psychotherapy, which I've been a fan of since I've been in Austin, Texas for before coming to Santa Monica for a few years. And I think these are all great topics that I think we can take a deep dive into with part 2, if that's okay with you, Dr. Alexander.
I'd love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, give us a little more time to really dive.
Yeah, and especially with the peptides, because mid to 2020, I was experiencing with peptides. I was on BP 157, TB 500, Epitalon, 5-amino 1MQ, and then
1MQ,
and dihexacreme. And would love to talk about my experience, and then of course dive deeper into that as well. So
these are all things that people need to know is out there, right? People who suffer from different illnesses or diseases or, you know, just hormonal issues, like they need to know that people like you exist. And, you know, I just want to say thank you so much for making the Renegade choice to start your practice and to do what you're doing, because I know, especially coming from a medical family, how challenging that might have been and could have been, and all the different things that you might have faced in that. And, you know, I know my father being a neurosurgeon who is like you and seeing a big gap in the medical field and wanting to bridge that gap. I just think the more that people like you stand for, hey, there's more we can do here. There is more that we can do. We can combine all these systems. We can look at people as a whole. We can be proactive with our health and our wellness and our longevity, and we could stop issues from happening so that they don't happen. You know, that people don't have to live on on these medications, and they don't have to, you know, suffer from like really bad quality of life. Like there's things that people can do that really change the game. And so definitely, like, where can people find you? Where can they go? How can they start?
Best way to do it is just go to our website, the PazioInstitute.com. They can also call just the phone number.
Yep.
It's pretty easy to remember. It's 844-REGENERATE, REGENRATE.
I love it.
Oh, nice.
Okay, Pazio Institute, guys.
So they can find us, and they can do all kinds of different things. They can just, do a full package with us. We also have something just called the Launch Program. And it's like for younger people that don't have a lot of money, right? It's a pretty comprehensive blood panel, and they fill out a detailed questionnaire, and then they get an hour of my time to go over all of that with them so that they can understand their particular issues, and then what supplements they could take, what practices they can do, and what other recommendations I may have for them to go see other providers or, to come back again. So it's a really great way where, somebody that's not willing to, go into a full package to get started.
I love it.
I love it. A lot of options, and I love that it's all about, at the end of the day, I think I remember you saying to really achieve their full genetic potential.
Yes.
With a lot of the things that you're doing, which is so key. So once again, thank you so much for your time and energy today on the show.
You're so welcome.
And we look forward, guys, if you're interested, go check him now.
Yes.
And this is part 1, but go check out the Pazio Institute and everything that he said. But also stay tuned for our part 2 when we'll really dive deep. So much love, everyone.
Yes,
thank you
so
for joining
much
us and playing Full Out.
Thank you guys so much, and thank you, Dr. Alexander. Again, you've been listening to Relationship.
It's been a pleasure.
Yes, you've been listening to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio. Stay tuned for part 2 of this episode.